Welcome to Peas in a Podcast. If you've ever thought, why didn't somebody tell me this before I started managing a team? You are in the right place.
Each week we unpack the human stuff that makes or breaks your business without the corporate wank. And this week we're saying, congratulations, you're a manager. What the hell are you actually responsible for?
Yes, we are. It's not actually a rhetorical question. We're about to explain the answer to it.
Yes, we are. And it feels really important because I read a scary statistic, which actually wasn't a surprise to me because this is one of the reasons that we decided to bring management and leadership training so much into the pod, but that 82% of managers are appointed and put into their roles without any form of management training.
That doesn't surprise me. They're accidental managers.
Accidental managers.
You're really, really good technically at your job, really high performer when it comes to the technical elements of it. All of a sudden, the assumption is that you're going to be an amazing manager.
Yeah. And it's two completely different skill sets. I did a social media post recently that said it's the equivalent of saying to a chef, wow, you're cracking with knives. Why don't you have a go at that open heart surgery? It's a really dramatic
really scary.
Comparison, but it's true that it's apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. You can be a brilliant engineer, accountant, fitness instructor and suck at people management, but often you're either shoehorned in because it's the next natural step in your progression, which comes with more money, which is great, we all want that, or because, as you say, it's accidental and a team has been built around you and you actually never asked for it, but it's kind of been imposed upon you and you didn't think it was a big deal to say, yeah, sure, I'll manage people. It's almost unconscious, I think, for quite a number of people.
This is also why we started our business. If you remember, like I can't remember the exact quote, but it was the first paragraph that appeared on our very first website, like 10 years ago. If you're we want to work with specialists in their field because we recognise that this was our niche, right? It was people that were really, really great technically at what they want to do, that were really entrepreneurial by nature and wanted to build a business from it. The problem is that inherently means you have to grow through recruiting and supporting and managing a team.
Yeah.
So we see managers, middle managers that have been promoted into people that have been promoted into management positions. And we also work directly with business owners who were those specialists in their chosen field, who chose to start a business and grow it, and as a result, they became managers by default.
Yeah.
And it's all the same issues that we see, isn't it?
It is. And it may well be that people are inherently good at leadership and management and they find their way for a long time. But I think what we want to talk about today, that we've grouped into 5 key areas that we thought would be really useful to share. 5 key areas that you're actually taking on when you become a manager that you might not have realised you were taking on, or even if you did, you might not realise what that actually meant and what that entailed. And we're not doing that because we want to scare people. I think let's be clear about that right from the top. We're doing it because actually it brings into consciousness and awareness of what you have actually taken on, even if it isn't documented in a job description, even if it isn't explicitly being told to you by your manager if you have one, even if it wasn't something you took into consideration at the point that you became so busy you needed to bring someone on and effectively became a manager in your own business. It is what's happening and it is what's expected of you. So I think it's an awareness building piece and also a permission to say, I was never supposed to have this from the outset. Because I think because we've got this weird belief that it's an inherent capability, there's almost a little bit, I think, of some people thinking, well, why can't I get this? Why is this so hard for me?
Yeah.
And not reaching out to get the training, development, or even listening to the podcasts like ours or other development resources that they can get their hands on to upskill themselves. And I think it's that point of saying, actually, it's okay that you didn't know. It's okay that this is hard sometimes for you and you were never supposed to know this.
So validation, isn't it? And I think sometimes that's harder when also your own manager who promoted you into that position as well also doesn't recognise that you need to become this person, that you need to develop these skills.
Yeah.
So I think from a validation perspective, it's really key.
Yes.
Go through them.
Let's go through them. Okay, so number 1, the key phrase I use when I'm coaching and developing managers is, you are now responsible for the performance, behaviour and employee experience of all the people that sit below you. And they're like, oh, shit, am I? And performance being the key word there, because some managers are quick to say when they have, I'm sure you've experienced this, an underperforming employee or a problem with an employee, they'll talk about it as though it's completely beyond or outside of their control or influence. So they'll talk about this person's just not getting it, or they're just not doing what they're supposed to do. And that's really frustrating and uncomfortable for a manager. But there's almost a missing link for some where they haven't realised that that's a direct reflection on their own management capability, especially in terms of the language they're using to describe the problem.
Yeah. Or sometimes their own decision making, what they said, what they did. Yeah, it's funny because that's what you say to them. I usually directly go in with this is probably your fault somewhere down the line in the most affectionate, loveliest way of wanting to unravel that and resolve it and learn from it.
That's it.
But yeah, the level of influence that a manager has over when an underperformance issue arises and then starts to manifest and sustain quite often is really unknown to them.
Yeah. So I think understanding that becoming a manager means assuming responsibility for another person or people's collective performance, and understanding that it is your job to set clear expectations. And we've got other podcasts around that, to communicate those expectations, to monitor whether those expectations are being met, and to address with somebody when they're not. And that all falls squarely within that first category of you are responsible for other people's performance, which brings us on to the second, which is having difficult conversations. It comes with the territory. It's why we put it in Boss Mode Bootcamp, and it's got its own module, because even for the people who don't avoid them, and it's really interesting when you speak to managers, they're like, I've got no problem with it. It's like, yes, that's brilliant. Well done, because
but
I hate
how
them.
effective are you at having it?
Exactly. Bang on. Yeah. How effective are those conversations at actually driving behavioural change? And if they're not, and you're leaving those conversations none the more confident that somebody's behaviour is going to change or their performance is going to improve, then it hasn't yielded the result you want. Now, obviously, the employee has to do the other end. They have to pick up the other end of that difficult conversation, take the feedback and respond to it in a way we can expect them to, which is to make the required improvements if it's within their capability to do so. But the whole idea of I can be a manager without a difficult conversation just doesn't exist. And again, I think those difficult conversations could be about performance. Those difficult conversations might also be about delivering messages from management that you don't agree with or don't benefit from. And we've touched upon this in a previous podcast as well, because a big part of the role is aligning yourself with a wider leadership team if you have one, or doing what's in the best interests of a business if it is your own business. And that might not be popular. So those difficult conversations extend beyond just telling someone they're not doing very well in their job. It requires you to compartmentalize your own views and your own opinions and deliver a message because it's in the best interest of the business or what your senior leadership team is asking of you. And that absolutely comes with the territory. And
I think that's a problem, because it's not just delivering a message that actually sounds quite simple. It's facilitating the conversation that sits behind that message once you've delivered it. And that's a skill set in its own right. Like you said, it's the reason we spend 4 hours on one training module teaching the techniques and the skills to do it. And it's absolutely not a skill that a lot of people generally possess, whether they need to utilize it in their personal lives or their professional lives. So yeah, it's probably one of the most important skills, especially with all the legal changes that are coming up and the need for managers to be able to address and confront performance issues quicker and more proactively. And it's also the one that becomes probably the most destabilizing and destructive when it's avoided.
I think that leads us really nicely on to one that you can lead us through, which is actually that the decisions that the manager makes, and this is another area, have consequences legally, financially, reputationally. And this is your area of the business. This is your job. Your whole job is to protect our clients from those risks. There's only so far you can do that when it's managers that are on the front line. So that's another area that we should explore.
It's when managers make decisions or say things or do things and not realise the potential risk or ramifications of those decisions or of the things they say, because they're completely oblivious. And a lot of the work I do is a real education piece around that, both inside and outside of Boss Mode, when I'm dealing with specific employee relations scenarios that arise. And it's as simple things as a manager has allowed an employee to work from home for the last 5 or 6 weeks on random days of the week that the employers has asked them to, as a way of avoiding them not calling in sick, for example. It's one of those scenarios that we see all the time. Somebody's got a migraine or somebody's got a cough or a cold. They're well enough to work from home, but they're not well enough to be in the office. And managers find themselves getting themselves into a bit of a rut where they've allowed something to continue for so long, and it's become an expectation. I've managers that I don't know, refuse through a conversation with an employee to not let an employee start later on a Wednesday to deal with a potential childcare restriction without following any sort of process, or understanding that there is a process that they need to follow to consider that request, and follow and follow it fairly in relation to the decision that's made. When managers make a discretionary decision to pay somebody to be off sick, and that's become a bit of a custom in a business. All of those types of day-to-day decisions that managers make quickly
because they're busy.
Yeah, the things that employees say to them. An employee turn around and saying, "I feel overwhelmed and isolated," and the manager not hearing what that might mean by way of a duty or an obligation that's been triggered from that one comment. It's blissful ignorance is a real concern for me, because it's not a defence in law, and the law's getting more and more stricter and more heavily weighted in the employee's favour. And I've seen time and time again clients and managers fall into traps where they've made a decision, or they've said something, or they've ignored something an employee said, because they don't understand the potential legal ramifications of what they've done. And it's day-to-day stuff.
And it's the reason that we do monthly webinars for our managers, because it's about awareness building. It's not about fear. It's about building awareness and creating strategies, so that if something pops up in a day-to-day setting, if you're not sure whether you can dismiss something as banter, or actually it could be something worse, or
another good example,
or anything like that, as a manager, you've got these moments, micro moments I call them, where you've got the choice to act one way or another, and by making a poor choice in that moment, or even making the choice and then not seeking advice retrospectively to see if you need to do anything differently, can be really damaging over time. And those sorts of things tend to aggregate, which leads us probably quite nicely into the responsibility for psychological, if I can say it, safety and well-being, and people's general experience of the workplace. So creating environments where people feel safe to turn up, to be able to perform, to be able to not have fear of retribution, to be able to make a contribution, share ideas, where people feel that things are fair and equitable. And that, for me, can come down to decisions around Friday drinks and who you decide to invite. You know, you could decide that you've got people who are your real close mates, and you can fall into a pattern with that as a manager of going out with them on a Friday night, and then you're leaving out certain people time and time again. Those sorts of really tiny, seemingly benign decisions carry a sense of feeling, and then can create risk, can't they?
Not responding to an employee's email and not realising that you've done it 3 times in a row, and as a result the employee reading into why that might be the case. And you're right, it's usually the things we don't do as managers, and we're completely oblivious because we're all so busy, that we don't realise causes the most destabilisation to psychological safety, I think, of our employees sometimes.
Yeah, and I think for me the last one would be your behaviour as a manager. At the point you become a manager is on show.
Yeah,
and
role modelling.
Role modelling. Yeah, it's so hard in a way, because you don't have to be perfect. And we talked about this on, I think, in our psychological safety podcast episode, we talked about the need for role modelling, and role modelling fallibility was one of the big points that we made there. We're not asking people to be perfect. Be human, and acknowledge that we're not perfect. But on the flip side of that, I do see a lot of managers who have totally inadvertently destroyed their own credibility through their failure to be able to emotionally regulate in the moment. So how they deal with stress, how they talk about clients, how they talk about their manager people are watching and learning what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And you're scrutinised as a manager in a way that you're not scrutinised as a colleague. So you can't come in and bitch about the director and then slag off one of the customers and then go out for a fag with somebody who is a direct report of yours and continue to just talk about how impossible the workload is, and then stand a chance of bringing somebody into a difficult, potentially performance conversation where you need to challenge their behavioural conduct.
Yeah.
And it's those moments where somebody reaches out to one of us and says, I need to have this conversation, where they kind of go, I may not have always been my best version of myself. And again, that's okay. We can do a reset, but we need to probably think carefully about what we do before we do it and who we share our gripes with as a manager. And that comes down to actually your first team as a manager is always another manager, despite the fact that they might not be your favourite people or the people you spend most time with.
Yeah.
But your role modelling matters when it comes to your credibility as a line manager. And your credibility is everything in terms of influence.
Yeah, it's an integrity issue, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. I like that. I like those 5 points.
Little framework, not because we want to drive fear. I think what I would like managers to be aware of, it probably doesn't cover everything as well. There might be ones we've missed, but when you're a manager, you're taking responsibility for other people's performance, for their experience and psychological safety, for their having difficult conversations, for managing risk and being aware of risk and knowing that your decisions have consequences, and that you're a role model.
Yeah.
And doing that knowingly is important because that allows you to express the limits of your capability. When you realise actually there's a lot there, you can go, okay, and where might I need some work? So if someone's out there and they recognise somewhere in those 5, through the examples that we've raised, a couple of things that they're thinking, ooh, that might be me, give some of our other podcasts a listen, I think is probably something I would say.
And just referring to the most recent sign up on Bossmo Bootcamp, it was a manager who literally has been listening to our podcast and advocated up to our manager, her manager, and said, I don't have half the stuff that these ladies are telling me I need to have as a manager. Yeah. And that manager taking that seriously, it was a business owner, and then invested in that manager to help develop those skills. Like I said, in a world that matters more than ever right now in terms of the upcoming legal changes and the risks that they present. Yeah, I keep harping on back to that.
But it's really important, and it's a bit of a hill that we'll die on, isn't it? That managers shouldn't be let loose on people for their sake and the person that's reporting to them without proper training.
Yeah. It's not fair on either party.
No, and to an extent, wherever they get that from is fine. It's just that ours is better than everyone else's. Oh, okay. Well, I hope that was enlightening for everybody. That's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this podcast with your network and follow us on our socials at PyApp Consulting.
Join us next time. And until then, remember, people problems don't fix themselves.
And healthy cultures never happen by accident. See you next Tuesday.